Hello Penguinauts, I'm the Beardy Penguin and welcome back to Kerbal Rising. We join our Mercury class dropship performing its docking manoeuvre back with the ISS Spirit of Drados after its invasion of Gullis last episode. Now this is a very slow, very methodical process. This clip here is actually sped up to 8 times regular speed. That shows you just how long it takes to dock these damn vessels, and you wonder why Kerbal Rising takes so long to make. Anyway, we've got a brand new spacecraft being launched this turn, the ISS Vanguard, a new Mars-class light frigate, and it has its own Kerbstein drive, so we're sending it straight from Drados out to Gaia. Now we do actually need to hurry up and conquer Gaia because the orbits are changing, and soon enough Gaia isn't going to be within one turn Kerbstein range, so yeah, we probably need to hurry up with the whole annihilating them kind of thing. You can see just how much heat the Kerbstein drive produces as you see our radiators really struggling to cope with the amount they have to dissipate. But after a few days we arrive at the Gaia system. Apologies in advance. I know it's really dark, and that's actually a glitch with KS3P. I do fix it later on in the episode, but in these earlier clips, yeah, everything's really dark, so I do apologise for that. I've tried to lighten it up a little bit in post, but you might not be able to see some things too clearly. Anyway, now we are in a high orbit above Gaia. We can begin our rendezvous with the next moon. Now the Gaian fleet has actually retreated to the moon, and as such they've left Olei and its little moonlet, Oleimut, and these are the 2 new moons of Gaia, pretty much undefended. I say pretty much because although the space around them is completely empty, the surfaces definitely are not. There is a significant military presence, especially on the little moonlet, which is Oleimut. This is actually the source of the mystery goo, and even though it's only tiny, it has really low gravity. It actually has enough gravity to support goo oceans, which somehow managed to stick to the surface, and because of that there is a naval vessel on Oleimut. Yes, there's a naval vessel on a tiny little moon with less gravity than Minmus. You heard that correctly. And it has 300mm of armor and a ton of hit points. So, as you probably have guessed by now, we're not sending ground forces to go deal with it, because no ground force that we could possibly deploy with the Spirit of Drados or any relatively sized carrier would be able to deal with it or get through its armor. So what we're doing is, since this is an airless body, we're actually sending our Mars-class frigate to bombard it from orbit. Now the Mars-class is designed to be relatively cheap and compact, but still carry a lot of firepower. So it only has a single railgun, but that single 55mm railgun can do a lot of damage. Its other armaments include 2 50 caliber machine guns in order to deal with incoming torpedoes, and that's about it. As I said, it's designed to be functional, it's designed to be compact, and relatively cheap to manufacture, for a frigate anyway. It does have light armor as well, so 150mm all round, which should deflect a few shots, but isn't going to stop anything considerable. Certainly not going to stop any other railguns. But I asked you guys last turn whether or not you thought I should go for a Martian Congressional Republic or a United Nations approach, and the majority of you said actually go for a Martian Congressional Republic approach in space and a UN approach on the ground. So lots of overwhelming numbers on the ground, but have a small number of very powerful warships in space. So that's what I'm going to go for now, because the whole overwhelming numbers thing didn't really go too well last episode with the space battle over Gullis. Even though we won, we lost way too many ships. So from now on, all of our ships are going to be armoured, so they can actually take a few hits. And we're also going to use decent hull pieces. We're not going to have giant exposed hydrogen tanks, which is why we're actually using a new form of propulsion here. They're very small, very weak, but extremely efficient plasma engines, as you see. The burns we're doing take quite a long time to complete. I probably will replace these engines next turn. I'm not going to lie, I don't really like them that much. They're very weak, as you see strapped to the sides there, but since we're only maneuvering around bodies with very low gravity, it isn't too much of a problem. So now we're within 18 kilometers of the naval vessel. We can begin bombarding it with 55mm railgun shells, and it is returning fire in kind. It does get a few glancing hits on us, but at this kind of range and with its low velocity weaponry, it isn't doing anywhere near any damage to us. It's certainly not enough damage to get through our armor or do any significant damage. As I said, there is a fuel flow problem with these engines. For some reason, I need to sort this out. This new frigate needs a lot of tweaking. It needs new engines, and for some reason the fuel isn't flowing correctly, so I have to transfer it between the tanks, which is really a headache I'd rather not have while I'm spewing 55mm tungsten shells at a naval vessel on a tiny, essentially slightly larger than an asteroid covered in goo. This is a distinctly interesting situation. Gameslinx has Planet Overhaul for you, everybody. But yeah. So in our first pass, since we're travelling so quickly and we don't actually go too close, we don't really get many hits and we don't do a huge amount of damage, because even though these railgun shells are travelling at, I think, Mach 3, the larger railguns can fire them at Mach 7, but I think this railgun 55mm fires them at Mach 3. They're only tungsten slugs, and they're only 55mm tungsten slugs, so they just go clean through the ship. They don't really do much damage on their way through, so you have to hit the ship a lot of times before you start doing a lot of damage, especially with massive naval ships like this one. Against spacecraft, they're very, very good because they're long range, they're very quick, and ships are small enough that a railgun round going clean through them can do a lot of damage. But against a big naval vessel just sitting on the surface, yeah, not quite so effective. So we need to get a lot of fire onto this naval vessel, but we can't afford to be sitting inside its arcs of fire for too long. So I came up with a bit of an ingenious plan. The guns on the deck of this naval vessel don't have unlimited pitch. They cannot pitch or elevate the guns right above them. And that means if we station our spacecraft directly above the naval vessel, the guns won't actually be able to shoot us. At least not the main guns, the main long-range guns. The shorter range 30mm and point defense cannons will be able to hit us. But as long as we maintain our range, we should be able to just pour fire into it down from above and do damage absolutely with impunity. So that's exactly what we're going to do. As you see, we're firing our 55mm railgun and we're starting to do some damage. Even though we've started firing continuously, this thing still takes a lot of damage. Yeah, I'm kind of worried about how we're going to deal with naval vessels in the future. Probably going to have to invest in some really quite powerful bombing aircraft. But on low gravity worlds like this, you can't use missiles, and I guess bombs would work, but that'd be pretty difficult to pull off. And as you see, we do actually close a little too close and take a little bit of superficial damage. I think we lose a radiator and lose a couple of millimeters of armor. And we actually open up with our 50 cal point defense cannons there. But we managed to maneuver ourselves back over the ship, and then there we go. We're back over and we're back firing our 55mm railgun down through the deck. But still, it takes another couple of minutes before we actually do any significant damage to this thing whatsoever. This is just utterly ridiculous, isn't it? A space frigate shooting a goddamn naval vessel on a sea of goo. But finally, we managed to get through its thick hull armor and we start doing a lot of damage to it. We tear it in half, but its weapons are still intact, so we're just going to sit here using our RCS system to sort of keep ourselves oriented correctly, and then firing those little plasma thrusters when we need to. We will send it back to the Draidos shipyard next turn, as I said, for some more powerful engines, because there's going to be a big fleet battle next turn. And yeah, we're going to need to have some slightly more powerful engines to pull some pretty high G maneuvers. But after a few more rounds fly in, we destroy the bridge, and another round decapitates it entirely, and the vessel is vanquished without putting up too much of a fight. I'm quite happy with this this frigate, how it performed. Obviously it needs some engine upgrades, we need to change the fuel flow, but I'm quite happy with how it looks. It's got a compact sort of functional look. And now what we have to do is head off into orbit once again. So now we've dealt with the little moonlit Oleimut, we can go for the main moon Olei itself. So we're bringing the Spirit of Draidos over from Gullis, and we're going to go attack the surface with our two Ison class tanks once again. We have actually given those two tanks some upgrades. We've given them RCS systems because, yeah, we had some problems on Gullis with them flipping over. We can make small repairs out in the field, add RCS systems, make small little adjustments and stuff. But when it comes to making major repairs, replacing engines and the like, we do need to send things back to the Draidos shipyard. Thankfully, the way our movement system works, we can move back to friendly territory without it using our turn. So next turn, we can head back to Draidos and back to Gaia in a single turn. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So now we're in a low orbit over Olei, we can actually move our Mercury class dropship out of the hangar of the ISS Spirit of Draidos, and we can head down to the surface. Spirit of Draidos looking kind of lonely without all the corvettes and skiffs in the hangar bays. We have still got a Ceres class skiff lying around. It's back orbiting Gullis, just make sure that the Gaians can't perform any kind of counter-attack and retake that moon while we're not looking or something. Now, Olei as a moon, as you see, it's a bit brighter now. We fixed KS3P. It's got the same gravity as the moon, so 0.16 of a G, and it's kind of interesting. It's just sort of beige, but it's got some interesting geological features. So it's got lots of canyons crisscrossing the surface and the like. But the most interesting thing is that it's in a polar orbit of Gaia, which means as we're descending to the surface, since we're actually over the south pole of Gaia, we get some bloody beautiful views of the rings. So yeah, we get some pretty stunning views, and I can't help myself pressing F2, turning off the UI, and just getting some gorgeous shots every now and then, so I have to excuse that. We narrowly fly through some mountains here, and we begin turning ourselves around and getting ready for our final slowdown maneuver. Now, this sort of body, it's sort of pushing the limit of what the Mercury class can actually land on, because although it can land on air, you know, worlds with an atmosphere, when it comes to airless bodies, it will probably struggle with anything above 0.2 of a G, since it does have to sort of land on its back and then flip forward, which is very dangerous to do on high G worlds. Yeah, we'll have to develop some kind of lander for sort of high gravity worlds which don't have atmospheres, like Tylo. We'll have to come up with some kind of landing system for that. I'm not looking forward to invading Tylo. Yeah, well, whoever has to do that, maybe Tape will do it. For those of you who don't know, some people have actually been a bit confused. This is a multiplayer series with myself and Tape Gaming, but yeah, it hasn't been that obvious yet because we haven't encountered each other. Our nations, our empires have just been expanding, but soon enough we will actually encounter each other. We're just building up our armies, getting into the swing of things, and then I think probably more like around turn 8, 9 or 10 we'll actually encounter each other and start having some interplanetary warfare. But our Mercury class touches down and we can begin getting out our Ison classes with their small upgrades, as I mentioned earlier. So they have some RCS systems now, and that should stop them flipping over too much. Of course, if they take, you know, a shell to the side and get flung up into the air, they might still have some trouble, you know, bit of foreshadowing there. But we just pull them out of the Mercury class and we can begin scouting towards the mining installation. Just gonna have a drink. I'm determined to do this whole thing in one take. I'm not gonna pause, so you're gonna have to bear with me. But there we go. Oh, look at that. Beautiful view of Gaia's rings. Isn't that gorgeous? So we send one of our tanks up to the top of the hill and we decide to get a view of the mining installation down below us. We have 2 light tanks. I say quote unquote light tanks because yeah, they're not particularly light. When we swap to them, as you see, we just get over the hill so we can do some target reconnaissance with our long-range binoculars, I guess. And we swap to them, and yeah, they have 75mm chain guns as well. So this is actually kind of an even fight, but they're much bigger and much chunkier, which makes them bigger targets, but also means they have more health. So let's see how this goes. So we're charging our 2 tanks straight over the top. We're going back to our Fall of Kerbin roots here. Over the top, I say. So we're just going to charge straight up at full speed and just go straight at the position. How well this is going to go? Well, I guess we'll find out, won't we? We're just trying to use the element of surprise, I guess, just fly over this hill here and just go in guns blazing with the beautiful shot of Gaia. Nice and peaceful in the background, just a complete contrast to what we're doing on its polar moon. It's quite interesting having a polar moon, actually. Be interesting, I guess, doing some kind of career mode playthrough of Gameslinx with Planet Overhaul, but there are a lot of planets, so you certainly have your work cut out for you. But here we go, flying over the top, with our RCS systems managing to keep us upright, and we open fire. However, the enemy chain guns respond in kind, and we start taking some pretty damn serious damage. Last turn on Gullis, we were alright because most of the guns on the enemy tanks were only 25mm, 30mm in caliber, so our armour did a decent job of holding them at bay. Yeah, not so much here. As you can see, yeah, we are taking a lot of hit and a lot of damage, and soon enough a round flies in and just sends our tank flying into the air uncontrollably. Thankfully, I think the tanks then recognise it as an aircraft, so they divert their fire away from it while it's sitting up in the open against our other tank, which is actually doing quite well, and it's taking out the forward enemy tank and putting in quite a bit of damage. And after a few more shots and after our second tank finally crashes into the ground, that first enemy tank actually stops returning fire. So we have actually managed to destroy the first tank, but we're going to need to close in and circle around the base in order to take out that second one. You see here trying to turn off burn together to stop it trying to copy the other tank, so we can actually get it under control once again. Thankfully we managed to orient ourselves. Thank God for those RCS systems. But our first tank has lost all of its armor. It took a fearsome beating during that opening salvo, but after a quick save and reload to get rid of some of the debris to stop the game lagging quite so much, we move in to finish the second tank. We're going to do this pretty much the same tactic that we did last turn on Gullis. So we're going to send one tank around one side and the other tank around the other side, and then we're going to split its fire, hopefully confuse it, and then annihilate it at point blank range. Of course, we're going to try and send the armoured tank around first, because, you know, the unarmoured one takes one shot, it's going to be toast. So, yeah. Thankfully, we can repair planetary units. We can't repair space units. That's why a lot of you might be thinking that, oh, the whole orbital bombardment thing earlier was maybe a little unfair, but if you think about it, if you invade with planetary forces are tied to the vessel that they're actually launched by. So you send a carrier back to a shipyard, you can replace all of the planetary units. If we'd lost that frigate, we'd have lost it. We'd have had to replace it with a whole new frigate. So it's very, very risky to bombard stuff from orbit if you don't really know what you're doing. But we managed to circle around the launch pad and we annihilate the final tank without any problems. So now we've captured the two outermost moons. Next turn we can move upon the moon shipyard and take out the Gaian fleet once and for all. Thank you for watching, everyone. I do hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.